Thank you, Dr. Herman. The University of New England's College of Osteopathic Medicine plays an important role in addressing the primary care and rural health needs of this state, and New England and the country. Almost 60% of UNICOM graduates enter primary care, and of these, over 40% practice in rural and underserved areas throughout Maine and the nation. We're very proud of the impact we have had in addressing the healthcare needs of our state and our region. These successes would not have been possible if not for our founders, a group of physicians described by Dr. Pardue, many of whom had young families and new practices. They committed their time, channeled their passion. They literally mortgaged their houses to start this school. How many of you guys would mortgage your house to start a school for a bunch of people you didn't know? Seriously. They did all that to start the College of Osteopathic Medicine. The legacy of service and commitment to the welfare of community that they established, that they brought to that endeavor, remains at the core of who we are. One of our alumni who embodies this legacy of service and commitment is Dr. Uzma Syed. Dr. Syed is a 2005 graduate of UNICOM. She serves as the chair of the COVID-19 Task Force and the director of Antimicrobial Stewardship Center for Excellence at Good Samaritan Hospital Medical Center. She currently is partnered at South Shore Infectious Disease as an infectious disease physician. Dr. Syed has been an advocate for education and access to vaccines across diverse communities within the U.S. and globally, collaborating with organizations such as USAID for global vaccine equity. Dr. Syed has been a fierce leader in infectious disease, business leadership, women's rights, education, and diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. She was recently featured on a TEDx talk for COVID-19 called The Ripple Effect of Our Neighborhoods to Beyond. Please help me in giving a warm welcome to Dr. Syed.
Thank you, Dean Carrero. Good afternoon. It is my privilege and honor to address the class of 2026. We all have our journeys in medicine, but when I sat on the other side of this podium, in your shoes, in those same seats, I never imagined that my journey would be full of the twists and turns that it has taken. By the start of the second year of my residency, I had already decided on pursuing a career in endocrinology. I felt confident in my decision, having sampled so many different specialties as a medical student and completing a traditional rotating internship, followed by my internal medicine PGY 1 year. It was a choice I had made because of my fondness for the specialty and the consistency that it provided. In August of 2007, I went into work and had my usual morning routine, working as a second-year resident on my very first day of my infectious diseases elective rotation. My first patient encounter during my elective was for someone who was presenting with a fever and weakness. Throughout my interview, I gathered a detailed history from the patient. As I further investigated, I learned that the patient had recently traveled outside of the country and had exposure to exotic animals, as well as sick contacts. As I dug deeper, I uncovered a world of possibilities, leading me down to a different path of questioning. During my physical examination, I then shifted my focus to all of the fine details, and I discovered a faint rash on that patient's abdomen that they failed to notice. As I jotted down notes, I found a slew of lab abnormalities, and my brain kept jumping from one possibility to another. I was fascinated by the disease detective I was becoming. I formulated my differential diagnosis and assessment, and I presented my plan for this patient during rounds. The possibilities were broad, ranging from viral illness to zoonosis to travel-related illness. By the next day, the rash had disappeared, the fever had resolved, and laboratory data revealed bacterial infection in the blood, and the patient had a formal diagnosis of typhoid fever. Over the course of the month, there were many cases that stimulated the mind to go off into far-off places, exotic and less traveled places, and many cases that reminded us never to lose sight of what may be the usual pathogen and illness. There were cases of pneumonia, UTI, and sepsis, And there were also cases of malaria, dengue, and chikungunya, to name a few. I fell in love with infectious diseases because the field was extraordinary to me. It was not static, it was dynamic, it was all-encompassing, and more so than anything, it was fulfilling. My mind was constantly engaged and stimulated, and on that very first day of my elective, I had my very own moment of enlightenment. I had found my purpose. I discovered that although my mind was telling me that I was well suited for endocrinology, my heart told me to take a leap into ID. During my journey, I found myself in a moment when my studies, my training, and practice all came together into my own little piece of the marvel of medicine. A marvel which left me in wonder more than a decade later. March 2020, my very first COVID-19 case. It was very different from what we read in medical reporting and in the media. It was not the elder, the senior citizen, the frail with underlying medical conditions who walked into the emergency room. It was, in fact, a young, healthy, 20-year-old who could be any one of you sitting in this audience who was so sick and gasping for air that they needed oxygen support. It was indeed a humbling experience to see and to learn just how small we are in the grand scheme of a global pandemic. The pandemic has forever changed our lives. Never before did medical students, medical residents, physicians, and medical schools need to adapt to an evolving infectious disease catastrophe. We sheltered in place and we protected our students and residents, but it came with a steep learning curve and sacrifices for so many. Nevertheless, we adapted as a medical community and we supported one another. Starting your journey during the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, the current monkeypox outbreak, and the emergence of previously nationally eliminated diseases such as polio can be difficult to say the least. When faced with adversity, in our industry, you will learn essential life lessons about resilience, adaptability, communication, and teamwork. The intricate, interconnected web of medicine and the vital role you all play as a parent. What you gain will be dependent on how much you seize every opportunity. You are entering medicine when so much is changing in our healthcare industry, in our country, in our patients. Your training now will equip you to handle our usual scenarios and adapt to unusual emerging outbreaks. With the globalization of travel, urbanization of lands, and climate change, we will continue to see diseases abroad and on our soil. You must be prepared to shift and adapt in every situation. The scope of medicine was ever-changing for generations before us. With the advent of vaccines, we could have somewhat of a predictable scope of practice. However, with the continued misinformation, disinformation, and anti-vaccine propaganda, reemergence of prior pathogens will continue, and the persistence of novel viruses will hinder complete progress, as we have seen in our current pandemic. Looking ahead, you are in a position to contribute to advancement in science, make your mark on history, and continue healing people and serving as their advocates in their most vulnerable times. You will help shape which way the pendulum swings for the next century. Whether it is advocating for children and their immunizations, facilitating public health emergencies, reaching people who need access to health care in rural areas, working with national organizations to secure treatments for patients, or establishing the next standard of care for heart disease, stroke, or diabetes, you will all play a vital role. You chose medicine because you wanted to make an impact and help people. And medicine chose you because you have the heart, the sincerity, and empathy to listen, to learn, and to heal those most in need. The road that lies ahead will be full of delight, but it will also be full of challenges. You will sacrifice your time with friends, with family, and loved ones, but you will do so knowing that this sacrifice comes with the highest reward and privilege given only to a select group of people to be able to practice this art. You have started your journey right here in one of the best institutions in this country, one that genuinely nurtures and builds the next generation of medical experts and scientific leaders. Today, please take a moment to celebrate your achievements and what is yet to come. So many people from all walks of life yearn to be in your seats, to wear your white coat, to use your stethoscope, and to apply your knowledgeable skill set, but they did not receive the same opportunity. Your seat in this room is a true gift. And with that, I leave you with a few words of wisdom. You too can have a share of the marvel in medicine in any field, no matter how or when you seek it. Stay present in every moment, physically, mentally, emotionally. The time that you have now will not be given back to you in years to come. If the pandemic has taught us anything, it is that time is precious. Take advantage of every opportunity to learn, to listen to your teachers, to your peers, and most importantly, listen to your patients. Be that patient advocate. Decide what you want your legacy to be. Continue to build and serve the medical community by investing in the future talent of tomorrow. This is part of your responsibility. Remember where you came from and always remember to pay it forward. Find ways to weave your other passions into your life. Your career may not be the only thing that defines you. And lastly, when you think your journey ends, remember, another chapter is always starting. Our journeys have no beginning, no end, only growth and passion. This is your journey. You define it. You alone hold the key to your success. It has brought you to this point in your lives. Take forward with you now the pride in your accomplishments and a hope in building a better future for healthcare. Have humility to be able to practice this art of medicine with the freedoms that we are given. Have appreciation for the mentors and sponsors and loved ones who have gotten you to this point in your life. And most of all, have love for the craft that you will grow from here on end. Thank you.
So I've been teaching at UNE since 1993, and I am constantly amazed at how fabulous and wonderful and incredible these students are. And I just look up to them, and I'm just so impressed with them. So thank you, Dr. Syed. And yes, just amazing, right? I think you passed your first OMM exam, didn't you? No, sorry. I was the chair of OMM at the time. So blue lobsters are 1 in 2 million, and so are you. And these are for her husband and her children.
Jihan Abdelkabir, Msila, Algeria. Nazifa
New Hampshire.
Maxwell Alexander Auerbach, Highland Park, Illinois.